So, carrying on with Machiavelli's The Prince, we're on page 45, chapter 11. Now, I hope you guys, America, I've invited you to read along with me, so I hope I'm not just reading this for myself. I hope you're paying attention. I'm gonna rewatch all these because this is, God, I paid thousands of dollars in college for this, and I'm giving it to you for free. Yeah, right. Yeah. You think college people actually respect this kind of work and knowledge? We'll find out! Page 45, chapter 11, of Ecclesiastical Principalities. It remains now only to reason about ecclesiastical principalities. All difficulties regarding them come before they are possessed, because they are acquired either by virtue or by fortune, and are maintained without the one or the other, for they are sustained by orders that have grown old with religion, which have been so powerful and of such a kind that they keep their princes in the state however they proceed and live. These alone have states and do not defend them. They have subjects and do not govern them. And the states, though undefended, are not taken from them. The subjects, though ungoverned, do not care, and they neither think of becoming estranged from such princes, nor can they. Thus only these principalities are secure and happy, but as they subsist by superior causes, to which the human mind does not reach, I will admit speaking of them, for since they are exalted and maintained by God, it would be the office of a presumptuous and foolhardy man to discourse on them. Nonetheless, if someone were to inquire of me how it came about that the church has come to such greatness in temporal affairs, despite the fact that before Alexander the Italian powers, and not only those that are called powers, but every baron and lord, even the least, held her in low esteem in temporal affairs. And now a king of France trembles at her, and she has been able to remove him from Italy and ruin. And now a king of France trembles at her, and she has been able to remove him from Italy and to ruin the Venetians, though this is known. It does not seem to me superfluous to recall a good part of it to memory. Before Charles, king of France, came into Italy, this province was under the power of the Pope. The Venetians, the king of Naples, the Duke of Milan, and the Florentines, these powers had to have two principal concerns: one, that a foreigner not enter into Italy with arms; the other, that none of them enlarge his state. Those who concerned them the most were the Pope and the Venetians. And to hold back the Venetians, the union of all the others was needed, as in the defense of Ferrara. To hold down the Pope, they made use of the barons in Rome. Since these were divided into two factions, Orsini and Colonna, there were always cause for quarrel between them, and standing with arms in hand under the eyes of the pontiff, they kept the pontificate weak and infirm. And although a spirited pope, like Sixtus, sometimes rose up, still fortune or wisdom could never release him from these inconveniences, and the brevity of their lives was the cause of it. For in the 10 years on the average that a pope lived, he would have trouble putting down one of the factions. For if, for instance, one pope had been almost eliminated, the Colonna, another one hostile to the Orsini rose up, which made the Colonna rise again, and there would not be time to eliminate the Orsini. This brought the temporal forces of the Pope to be held in low esteem in Italy. Then Alexander the Sixth arose. Of all the pontiffs there have ever been, he showed how far a Pope could prevail with money and forces, with Duke Valentino as his instrument. Caesar Borgia, the face of Jesus Christ, Duke Valentino. And with the invasion of the French as the opportunity, he did all these things. What is this? Retaining them are much less than in new states, because it is enough only not to depart from the order of his ancestors, and then to... That sounds right. Okay, this brought the temporal forces of the Pope to be held in low esteem in Italy. Then Alexander the Sixth arose. Of all the pontiffs there have ever been, he showed how far a pope could prevail with money and forces. Alexander VI, with Duke Valentino as his instrument, with the invasion of the French as the opportunity, he did all the things I discussed above in the actions of the Duke. And though his intent might not have been to make the church great, but rather the Duke, nonetheless, what he did redounded to the greatness of the church. After his death, the Duke being eliminated, and the church fell heir to his labors. Then came Pope Julius, and he found the church great, since he had all Romagna, had eliminated the barons in Rome, and had annihilated those factions through the blows struck by Alexander. Julius found the path still open to a mode of accumulating money never used before Alexander. These things Julius not only continued but increased, and he thought about how to gain Bologna, Bologna for himself, eliminate the Venetians, and expel the French from Italy. All these enterprises succeeded for him, and with all the more praise, in as much as he did everything for the increase of the church and not as some private individual. He also kept the Orsini and Colonna parties within the same limits in which he found them, and although there might be some head among them ready to make a change, still two things restrained them. One, the greatness of the church, which frightened them; the other, not having cardinals of their own, for they are the origin of the tumults among them. Nor will these parties ever be quiet as long as they have cardinals, for cardinals nourish parties within Rome and without, and the barons are forced to defend them. Thus, from the ambition of prelates arise disorders and tumults among the barons. His Holiness Pope Leo then has found this pontificate most powerful. One may hope that if the others made it great with arms, he, with his goodness and infinite other virtues, can make it very great and venerable. Page 48, chapter 12. How many kinds of military there are, and concerning mercenary soldiers. Having discoursed in particular on all the qualities of those principalities which at the beginning I proposed to reason about, having considered in some part the causes of their well-being and ill-being, and having shown the modes in which many have sought to acquire and hold them, it remains for me now to discourse generally on the offense and defects befitting each of those named. We have said above that it is necessary for a prince to have good foundations for himself. Otherwise, he must of necessity be ruined. The principal foundations that all states have, new ones as well as old, or mixed, are good laws and good arms. Because there cannot be good laws where there are not good arms, and where there are good arms there must be good laws. I shall leave out the reasoning on laws and shall speak of arms. I say, therefore, that the arms with which a prince defends his state are either his own or mercenary or auxiliary or mixed. Mercenary and auxiliary arms are useless and dangerous, and if one keeps his state founded on mercenary arms, one will never be firm or secure, for they are disunited, ambitious, without discipline, unfaithful, bold among friends, among enemies, cowardly, no fear of God, no faith with men. Ruin is postponed only as long as attack is postponed, and in peace you are despoiled by them, in war by the enemy. The cause of this is that they have no love, nor cause to keep them in the field other than a small stipend, which is not sufficient to make them want to die for you. They do indeed want to be your soldiers while you are not making war, but when war comes, they either flee or leave. It should be little trouble for me to persuade anyone of this point, because the present ruin of Italy is caused by nothing other than its having relied for a period of many years on mercenary arms. These arms once made some progress for some, and may have appeared bold among themselves, but when the foreigner came, they showed what they were. Hence Charles, King of France, was allowed to seize Italy with chalk. And he who said that our sins were the cause of it spoke the truth, but the sins were surely not those he believed, but the ones I have told of. And because these were the sins of princes, they too have suffered the punishment for them. I want to demonstrate better the failure of these arms. Mercenary captains are either excellent men of arms or not. If they are, you cannot trust them, because they always aspire to their own greatness, either by oppressing you, who are their patron, or by oppressing others contrary to your intention. But if the captain is not virtuous, he ruins you in the ordinary way. And if one responds that whoever has arms in hand will do this, mercenary or not, I would reply that arms have to be employed either by a prince or by a republic. The prince should go in person and perform himself the office of captain. The republic has to send its citizens. And when it sends one who does not turn out to be a worthy man, it must change him. And if he is, it must check him with law, so he does not step out of bounds. And by experience, one sees that only princes and armed republics make very great progress. Nothing but harm ever comes from mercenary arms, and a republic armed with its own arms is brought to obey one of its own citizens with more difficulty than is a republic armed with foreign arms. Rome and Sparta stood for many centuries armed and free. The Swiss are very well armed and very free. The people of Carthage are an example of ancient mercenary arms. They were nearly oppressed by their own mercenary soldiers at the end of the First War with the Romans, even though the Carthaginians had their own citizens as heads. After the death of Epaminondas, Philip of Macedon was made captain of their troops by the Thebans, and after his victory took their liberty from them. The Milanese, after Duke Filippo died, hired Francesco Sforza against the Venetians, and he had overcome the enemy at Caravaggio. He joined with them to oppress the Milanese, his patrons. Sforza's father and the hire of Queen Giovanna of Naples had a stroke, left her disarmed. Then, so as not to lose the kingdom, she was compelled to throw herself in the lap of the King of Aragon. And if the Venetians and the Florentines have in the past increased their empires with these arms, and their captains did not thereupon make themselves princes, but defended them, I responded that the Florentines were favored by chance in this case because of the virtuous captains whom they could have feared. Some did not win, some had opposition, others turned their ambition elsewhere. The one who did not win was Giovanni Acuto. Since he did not win, one could not know his faith, but everyone will confess that if he had won, the Florentines would have been at his discretion. Sforza always had the Braceschi against him, so that each watched the other. Francesco turned his ambition to Lombardy, Braccio against the church in the kingdom of Naples. But let us come to what happened a little while ago. The Florentines took as their captain Paolo Vitelli, a most prudent man who from private fortune had secured very great reputation. If he captured Pisa, no one would deny the Florentines would have had to stay with him, because if he'd gone over and hire to their enemies, they would have no remedy, but if they kept him, they would have had to have obeyed him. If one considers the progress of the Venetians, one will see that they acted securely and gloriously while they themselves made war, which was before they turned to enterprises on land with their own gentry and armed plebes. They performed most virtuously, but when they began to fight on land, they left this virtue behind and followed the customs of war in Italy. And at the beginning of their expansion on land, because they did not have much of a stake there, and because they were held in great repute, they did not have much to fear from their captains. And as they expanded, which was under Carmagnola, they suffered an instance in this era when they saw he was most virtuous, since the Duke of Milan had been defeated by them under his government, and when they learned, on the other hand, that he had turned cool toward the war, they judged they could no longer win with him because he did not want to, nor could they dismiss him without losing what they had acquired. So in order to secure themselves, they were forced of necessity to kill him. Then they had as their captains Bartolomeo de Bergamo, Roberto da San Severino, the Count of Gliano, and such. With these they had to fear for loss, not for their gain, as then happened at Vaila, where they lost in one day what they had acquired with such trouble in 800 years. For these arms bring only slow, late, and weak acquisitions, but sudden and miraculous losses. And because with these examples I have come into Italy, which has been governed for many years by mercenary arms, I want to discourse on them more deeply, so that when their origin and progress have been seen, one can correct and make them better. So you have to understand that in recent times, as soon as Italy began to repel the empire and the Pope gained much reputation in temporal affairs, Italy divided into many states, for many of the large cities took up arms against their nobles who, formerly supported by the emperor, had kept them under oppression. And the church supported the cities to give her self-reputation in temporal affairs. In many other cities, their citizens became princes over them. Hence, since Italy had fallen into the hands of the church and a few republics, and since the priest and the other citizens did not have knowledge of arms, they began to hire foreigners. The first who gave reputation to this kind of military was Alberigo da Conio from Romagna. From his discipline came, among others, Braccio and Sforza, who in their times were the arbiters of Italy. After them came all the others who have governed these arms until our times. And the result of their virtue has been that Italy has been overrun by Charles, taken as booty by Louis, violated by Ferdinand, and insulted by the Swiss. The order they have held to has been, first, to take away reputation from the infantry in order to give reputation to themselves. They did this because they were men without a state who lived on industry. Having a few infantry did not give them reputation, and they could not feed very many, so they were left with horse and were fed and honored in tolerable number. And things come to the point that in an army of 20,000 soldiers, not 2,000 infantry were to be found. Besides this, they had used all their industry to rid themselves and the soldiers of trouble and fear by not killing one another in battles, but taking prisoners without asking ransom. They did not go against towns in the night. Those in the towns would not go against their tents around the camp. They made neither stockade nor trench. They did not campaign in winter, and all these things were permitted in their military orders and discovered by them, as has been said, so as to escape trouble and dangers, so that they have led Italy into slavery and disgrace. We ended off there. The next chapter is Auxiliary Mixed in One Zone Soldiers, chapter 13, page 54. Coming up next,